Hello Sea Wolves and welcome back to the show. So it was a pretty exciting 24 hours, the speed record getting pushed up several times. There's a lot going on in the fleet. Definitely 3, maybe 4 people have made it into that by now fabled low, while the rest is slowly but certainly, well, I wouldn't say if you so slowly, are pretty quickly falling behind now. So that split is really materializing. We'll also talk a little bit more today about the back of the fleet, because many of you have been asking me like, hey, what's going on with kind of the dagger board fleet? So we'll talk about that also. But before we do that, I hope you have something delicious in your possibly official Sea Wolf mug. I got my made by my grandma mug here. That's of course good. Also, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Cheers.
Hello, I'm in the chat table. Just keep an eye outside. It was a pretty busy night last night. We would end up having 30 knots of wind when I was expecting 20. And so I ended up having to change sails a couple of times, and on the bow found myself knee deep in water. The sea state is building, it's not very comfortable. And now just trying to find a way of going fast without damaging the boat, or limiting it anyway. The boat is nose diving quite a lot and slamming quite a lot. So yeah, not very easy, but we're making, there you go, the boat stops. We went from 25 knots to 15 knots, 12 knots, 10 knots. Yeah, we're making good time and speed towards South Africa at least, so that's a good sign. See ya, have a good day.
First things first, new speed records. I mentioned it yesterday, because this low is surrounded by just lots of weather, is very low in wind. So the ocean is very flat, creating more or less perfect circumstances for pushing the speed up very high, and that's what we're seeing. So today the race opened with Speed Kings, and well, we have both Thomas Rouillant and Jon Richomme continuously pushing up the record, and currently it's now in Jon Richomme's hands again with a grand total of 579.86 miles in 24 hours. So that translates to 1,073 kilometers in 24 hours. So that's roughly like a little bit over 50 kilometers per hour, like consistently over the 24 hours. Pretty insane if you think that these are sailing boat, folks. So pretty cool. And like I also said yesterday, we're getting very close to that 600 nautical mile boundary. This is already up again like 20 miles or something from the record that was set earlier. So yeah, I think that we're definitely gonna get to that 600 mile per 24-hour line at some point. Maybe later today, maybe tomorrow, maybe on the entrance into the Southern Ocean. There are several options, but so far the conditions are absolutely excellent for it. So that's pretty cool. And interesting detail also, if you look at the map here, just in a quick look forward to the strategy, if you look at the relative positioning of, so we have Charlie Dalin in the lead here, Thomas Rouillant right behind, and Yom here. They are kind of the 3 Mohicans that really made it into the system. So you can see kind of this hole that's already kind of beaten there. They really had the strong winds first. And then right behind there we have Sébastien Simon, Jeremy Bijou, Nicolas Leunven. They're also in, but well, we'll get to that later. They are very likely going to fall out of it. But Yom's position, well, he really turning out to be quite a master of positioning every time. We saw it when going to the Bay of Biscay. Great positioning, added a few places. We saw it with the Azores High. Great positioning, added a few places. Then he ended up in the front group, and I would say that judging by his position now, being the most southernmost boat in the most wind, currently he's doing a VMG of 23 knots. So I think I'll explain VMG later in the episode also for you guys. But he's doing a speed of 23 knots and a VMG of 23. And we see that actually Charlie right now is doing a speed of 21.9 knots with a VMG of 20.7. So he's more than a full knot slower in his 4-hour average. And well, the 24-hour average is pretty much the same. But over the last 4 hours, Yom has been quite a bit faster. So, and that makes sense because he's definitely in a bit more wind here. And so, yeah, I think also as this wind system is kind of going to be dipping a bit more south. So it's, yeah, so I think that Jome is actually in a really, really good position. I wouldn't be surprised if we see if we actually see a lead change there before we get to the Cape. But more on that, we're running ahead of the music here, more on that later. Let's start a bit with the end of the fleet, because we've been talking about the front runners and the fact that this high pressure was going on, and I've neglected a little bit the back end of the fleet, which, you know, of course not intentionally, because they're all heroes. So let's start with Zabo, of course, back on the way now from his repaired. Made it past the Canaries, and you know, in some nice wind now on his way to the doldrums. He's doing, how fast is he going? Well, nice speed of 17 knots right now. VMG over the last 24 hours of 11 knots, so not super fast, but decent speed. Will he catch up to the rest of the fleet? I doubt it. He is very, very far behind, but in the Southern Ocean, sometimes I talked about you know, people kind of falling out of low pressure systems and then having to wait for the next one. That sometimes does provide the option to make up something like 1,000 miles. So the race is not run. We're about 18%, 18% of the entire racetrack. For those of you who are following around for the first time and thinking, well, I think we're almost halfway there. No, we're like not even 20% of the race. Yeah, so we're really only getting started right now. But yeah, I doubt that he will really get back into the pack, but we'll see. Wish him the best, of course. Then we see Mr. Yu, who is doing the race literally with one hand, with his adapted both to his handicap. And yeah, even though he's technically, you know, really in last place, it's an absolutely monumental feat to do this, literally. I mean, you all seen the images, so you can imagine what it's like not only to do this with a fully healthy body, but to do this with one hand is just, yeah, it's like literally boggles the mind. Like I wouldn't even know like where to start dealing with that particular problem. Then if we look at the later field, so all of the non-foilers and a few foilers also in there. Interesting to see that Conrad doing very well, Jean more or less leading the non-foiler fleet right now, so he kind of regained his position there, because I think Eric was in the lead, and Tanguy also was at some point a bit sort of in the lead of the non-foilers, you could say. But yeah, I think Jean really in the best position again. So not to, you kind of almost expect it from the guy, but still you have to do it, right? So, and he's also a bit of older sailor, so still beating some young bucks there on his new boat, which is pretty cool. The one, so the rest of the foilers are a bit more the older generation, so I'm not really that surprised that they're doing like pretty good. The two that I'm a little bit like Arnaud Bozeris and especially Alan Rora on Hublot, I'm a bit surprised about that, especially Hublot, because that is the former Hugo Boss, the boat that was launched with like so much fanfare back in the day, which was the attempt boat for Alex Thompson to you know, be the first non-French sailor to win the VendeeGlobe. It was heralded as like the end-all, the be-all of fantastic foiling boats 4 years ago, basically. It was only ready just before the race, and they literally did one race before they actually started the Vendee. And of course we know how it ended, but the boat was very fast in Alex's hand. He led the race for a good 4 or 5 days with a pretty long lead coming off of that Storm Theda off of Finisterre, and the boat was doing really fast, and it was also one of the first IMOCA designs that was heralded to do, you know, sustained speeds above 30 knots, because it had very modern foils and everything. And compared to the newest foils, the foils on Hublot are still pretty modern. Like they're not like super old by any standard. And so I would say that he is for me the biggest surprise in the non-positive sense, that I am quite surprised with Alan being a young, powerful sailor, very talented young man. So yeah, I'm a bit surprised really to find him here. Whereas I would have, like, I didn't think that he would be like all the way in the front of the fleet, but I would have expected him somewhere around like where Damien Seguin is, where Roman Atanasio and Pip Hare, sort of, I expected him to be kind of around that particular crowd. So it could be that he just got unlucky with some navigational choices a few times, but I didn't really see that. He was with that group a bit earlier and somehow just fell a bit behind. So yeah, that's interesting that he stands out in that way. Then we have, of course, Isabel Jaschke, also a bit. I don't know why. I don't know why she fell a bit behind. Also, I don't think that she had any particular damage or any particular reason. So just maybe a bit bad luck with the wind, but mighty fast sailor and also did very well in the last VendeeGlobe. Lewis Burton, clearly taking it a little bit more easy. Oh, I think I keep going back to my geographical position here every time I deselect the sailor, so I shouldn't do that anymore. Yeah, so Lewis definitely taking it a bit easy now with the damage. He's in the good wind, doing good speeds now, pretty high, 23.9 24-hour average actually, and a VMG of 21, so pretty good overall. Yeah, then we have Damien Seguin. Of course, there's a nice little duel going on within Roman Atanasio and Pip Hare, and that was kind of known because even in the marina they kind of told me that they were kind of watching each other as far as you know, both having boats with very comparable capabilities, so they know that their boats are very close, and I think they're both really sort of watching each other, feeding off of each other's choices, and sort of making this into a bit of like a duel, let's say, between the two. And they're getting at it like pretty equally, with Pip a little bit ahead now, but that could change, or she could like extend a little bit. Pip doing very well, so also nice 24-hour average 16.6, nice VMG now over the last 4 hours of 20 knots, so it's almost as fast as the leader, so that's pretty good. Of course, Boris, very fast right now, almost 24 knots.
Hi everyone, 25th of November. That is the 16th day at sea, and for the first time we're going very fast. I have an intermediate waypoint 2 days ahead, and then I look very precisely how to position myself, but then the next 10-12 days is all downwind, full on, full speed. So that's good news, but it's also intimidating a bit. It's quite a run. Let's see. For now, everything is good on board. Fingers crossed it stays like that.
Beautiful VMG averages over the last 4 hours, also 23 knots, so he's doing very well. And then we really start to move into the leaders. Yannick Besthaven, interesting that he is still a little bit back, but that's kind of, I think, also his strategy. In the last Vendee, which he won, he also wasn't leading the race until I think maybe halfway down the Southern Ocean or something, when he really first took the lead and then never really let it go. So yeah, he's kind of, I would say, I expect him where he is, and that's just fine. And then of course we have Charlie, we have Thomas Rouillant and Jan Richon. And I would say that right now, I think that, yeah, Jan Richon really a master of positioning, and he again put himself in a very nice position here, a little bit more south, a little bit more wind. He's a little bit faster right now than Charlie Dalin, and if he can keep that up, I wouldn't be surprised if before they get to the Cape, it's going to either be maybe a lead change, with Jerome actually taking the lead as they go past the Cape. Could still be like 2 days before we get there. Or that they will be like almost on equal position as they go past the Cape. That's my prediction on that particular part anyways. So I got a lot of questions yesterday about VMG and polar performance. And so if I can explain it a bit better. So I brought actually, this is part of my plotter. It's kind of the wireless control screen. I can literally take it at home and it takes data from the internet. So I can, and even at home, see what's going on my boat. And you can see literally in here, so this you can see my polar diagram. So that's basically like a visual representation of the design of my boat. So this is the designers of it, you know, in my case, who have designed the boat, who know through trial and error and to just mathematical calculation what the optimal speeds of my boat are depending on the amount of wind, right? So you have basically a circle here that shows kind of half of it. So the real polar is kind of double it, but it's the same because it's a mirror image. So on the port side or starboard side, it works the same way. And yeah, we have basically different speeds, right? Wind speeds. So these are like boat speeds, and we got like wind speeds. And you can see the colors here. So that's 6 knots, 8 knots, 10 knots, 12 knots. So it's just the wind speeds up. And so we have the speed that the boat will go here represented. So 2, 4, 6, 8, that's kind of the top. And then you see, well, okay, so but 6 knots, that means that if I go at a 45 angle or a 60 angle or 90 angle to the wind, then I can get kind of the speed depending on what I see here with the line, right? So it shows that kind of the top speed for my boat is a little bit over 8 knots. So it's like 8.2, 8.3 knots. And I can get that speed if I go like 100 at a 120 degree angle to the wind. So it's downwind sailing in about 16 to 20 knots, right? So if I sail in 16 to 20 knots and if I go on a 120 degree angle, around there, if I have full sails up, then I should be able to get to the top speed that my boat can go at 8.3 knots. On the other hand, if I'm going to be like beating, so at like the maximum beating angle, and if I go in that same like 16 to 20 knot speeds, then I know that kind of the maximum beating speed of my boat, if I go like very high, like really pinching it full into the wind, is sort of like 6.5, 6.7 knots or whatever. And so, yeah, that's kind of the theoretical view, right? Now, my boat's been modified a little bit, so actually for me it's a little bit different. But this diagram goes kind of into the math that the plotter uses to kind of calculate a lot of things, right? And then if I switch this to my actual navigation view, then you can see something else interesting. So this would be like I got many screens, of course, but like, yeah, you know, like there's so much data and this is crazy. But this would be like, for example, one particular screen that sort of shows what it looks like, so what it kind of translates into. So you can see the wind speed here, different angles. This is like, I'm at home, so it updates from the internet like every few minutes. So this is not really real time. But you can see here's my polar performance in the pink. So that if I'm going, it shows the percentage of how fast I'm actually going compared to the full potential of my boat. And you can see here it says target BA, that means target beating angle, and target running angle, target RA. And so at this particular wind direction, so I have my true wind here, I have my relative wind here, etc. It would say that without giving it any location, right, so it's not really functioning towards any particular place, it's telling me that my ideal beating angle would be 42 degrees into the wind right now to get the optimum speed at this low wind. Or if I'm going to be running, I should go at 147 degrees. And my target speed, so my target beating speed for my full speed, let's say, would be 5.2 knots. So if I manage to get to 5.2 knots on this beating angle of 42 degrees, then I will probably see 100% here because I'm like optimally sailing. If I'm going to be running in this low wind, my optimum running speed, my optimum running VMG would be 4.5 knots. That would be like 100% of polar if I go downwind right now. And so VMG means velocity made good. And in essence, what that means is, so the computer, this is something that really only a computer can really calculate because it's very difficult to, in real time, calculate that. But in essence, it means if I have a location here, and I'm here, and I cannot really directly go there, because that would be the optimum course, right? The shortest course between any 2 points is like just a straight line. But in sailing, that's rarely possible. So if I'm going like this, or I'm going like this, I can't really use my boat speed to you know, see if I'm like the best, you know, going the best, right? Because maybe I'm going like 10 knots in this direction, but if somebody else is here and they're going only like 3 knots in a different direction, but they're much closer, they're going to be doing better, right? So the way that we calculate that is we don't look at the speed that we're actually doing in the particular direction, but we're looking at what is the speed that we're going towards the target, right? So it's like, how much are you actually moving towards the target, even though you're not going directly at the target? And so that's kind of a complicated calculation to calculate it, because it's not a direct calculation, right? So it takes several things into account. And that's the velocity made good. And so if we apply that, we can actually look, for example, at the tracker here at the Initiatives Cur website, which also has routeages. So when we zoom in here, you can actually see kind of the routes that are individually calculated. These are assumed, of course, so it can still be very different. But these are assumed optimal routes kind of calculated by their routing software based on the weather. So if we actually so this is kind of the moment now, right? And if we actually play that forward, we can see kind of what the computer calculates will be ideal VMG routes. So these are routes that are designed to give them the ultimate, most optimal, route towards the target. And this is where we can see that the split within the fleet, right, is very clearly happening. So if we go back to the moment now, you can see everybody kind of in a line right now. But when we extrapolate that, we see that kind of the three front runners, they are really going with the system, and the rest are consistently falling off because they're just not able to follow it like that. So they have to go more to the southern route. Here you see that the system really passing the stragglers on by, while the leaders are staying with the system longer, which ultimately will get them to the ice exclusion zone with quite a lead. But on the other hand, the lead doesn't, like the projected lead is not so incredibly large, but still very nice to see. And so that's all based on, what is the optimal VMG, which is constantly what all the skippers are trying to optimize their speed for. So yeah, that was it for the analysis today. Hope that again maybe helped you deepen your understanding of all the different processes that are going on. If you have questions, like things that you'd like me to really dive deeply into, put them in the comments, because I think maybe we'll do every Monday like an actual question hour. So next week Monday, I'll just pick a lot of your questions from the comments over the week, and I'll just make a whole list of them, and I'll just go point by point through all of like the most asked questions. I think that'll be a fun concept for a show anyways. So hope you really enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, subscribe, and see you in 24 hours.